Anybody here have dreams for your life? Yeah. Like, do you remember when you were a little kid and grandma and grandpa would ask you what you wanted to be when you grew up? Like, isn't that like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Did your family ask you that? Yeah, that's like the thing to do. What'd you say? Teacher? Hairdresser? Fashion model? Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. Helping people out. STNA, that's good. That's really cool. I always said that I wanted to be an architect. I don't know why. And then, they're like, well, you have to be good at math. And that's when my dreams were crushed. Literally, there is no other profession that uses less math than being a pastor of a church. I mean, even when you're counting attendance, you just add 50 or 100. There's no accuracy of any kind needed at all when it comes to numbers. And then you just have people in your life like Dana Hubble, and she will do the math for you. You know? I mean, you just don't even need the math. But everyone has dreams, right? And I had dreams, and I suppose I still have dreams. And it's interesting because the older you get, I mean, your dreams can change, right? Maybe you want to be an architect, and that turned into, well, I want to build a whole series of buildings, not just design my own house, right? Or maybe you have some other dream, and you think that maybe that it can grow and it can expand, but sometimes your dreams get simplified. Like, you kind of know yourself, you know who you are, and you're like, I just want to show up to work on time this week. Just want to make it to church on time this week. We were late this morning. We were running late. Happens all the times, which is why there are 3 songs before I preach. So there are dreams and there are aspirations, but there are also physical dreams, right? Those things that happen when you get sleep at night. Anybody here have dreams? Okay. I rarely dream. Almost ever. But I know a lot of people do. A lot of people have really vivid dreams, and their dreams mean something to them. Anybody find meaning in your dreams sometimes? Yeah? Anybody wake up in the morning irritated with someone because of a dream? Oh yeah, I've done this before. I'm like, I can't believe you said that. And my wife is like, what are you talking about? I'm like, what, my dream? And she's like, what are you talking about? What's your dream? I'm like, well, I'm going to need till noon to get over it. Now, if you haven't noticed, this story about Joseph is a story about dreams. In a lot of ways, it's a story about dreams. It's a story about physical dreams. Joseph has several dreams. And it's a story also about aspirations. Those things that we all have, the things that Grandma asked us about. But mostly, it's a story about experiencing the plan of God unfold in our lives through adversity and difficulty and loneliness. It's a story about God's blessing those who are faithful and sort of making their way through adversity. And this certainly has happened in Joseph's life. If you've been here the past few weeks, you can remember that Joseph was a man who was thrown into a well by his brothers, and then he was sold off to slavery. Why did they do that? Why did they sell him into slavery? Why did they throw him in a well? Well, they were jealous of him. They were jealous of him because he was their father's favorite child. And then Joseph ends up in Egypt, and he's sold to this man named Potiphar, who is part of the government in Egypt, and things are going really, really well. He's managing the home and the business of Potiphar, and he's wildly successful. Potiphar is incredibly wealthy, and everything's going well. But then his wife, she's kind of scandalous, and she makes up a story about Joseph, and he ends up in prison. But even in prison, Joseph is blessed, and he becomes as successful as one can be in prison. And he's given responsibility, and he's essentially leading the affairs of the prison. And it says repeatedly in chapter 39, this is what we read last week, chapter 39, it says repeatedly and prominently, the Lord was with Joseph. And I've told you that no matter what he had gone through, no matter what Joseph had gone through, no matter what adversity he faced, he remained faithful, and he was exceedingly and increasingly in a better position to be successful and make a difference and fulfill the plan God had established for his life. Even though he was going through it, as it says, the Lord was with Joseph. But how is it possible to continually be in a better position to make a difference and fulfill the plan that God has for your life when you're in a place like prison? How is it better to be in prison than not in prison? How can you fulfill the plan that God has laid out for you when you're locked up? Well, we're going to find out. We're going to find out. Now, I have to tell you that our dear Jared had the flu this morning, so I'm going to have to read you the scriptures, and you're just going to have to listen and believe me that these are the actual scriptures, and I'm not making it up. I promise you that I'm not. So, it says in Genesis chapter 40, sometime later, this is after Joseph has been thrown in prison, sometime later, and you can read this if you have the Bible app on your phone. This is Genesis chapter 40, verse 1. Sometime later, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt offended their master, who was Pharaoh. And Pharaoh was very angry with these two officials, and he put them in the custody in the house of the captain of the guard, same prison where Joseph was confined. Now the captain of the guard assigned them to Joseph, and he attended to them. When I read the Bible, and this is what you should do too, this is what we all should do, we just ask the questions of the text, right? Like, what is happening here? And why is this happening? And you just sort of ask questions to understand what it's saying. And when I read this, the question I want to ask myself is, how does a cupbearer get thrown into prison? What is your job? You bear the cup. There's a little baby over there who keeps distracting me. Someone's going to have to take care of that child. I mean, he's pretty cute. He's my kid. Number eight. I mean, but that's a little annoying, I gotta be honest with you. I'm just kidding, it's cute. How does a cupbearer get thrown into prison? You have one job, it's to bear the cup, right? So what does he do? Does he spill the cup? Does he, sleep in? Does he not show up to a function? I don't know what he does, but he didn't do a good job, and so he's in prison. I mean, I can understand the baker. I mean, the baker, he could have overcooked the steak. I don't know. He could have overcooked the steak. He could have, the Pharaoh could have been lactose intolerant or gluten intolerant or gluten allergy, and the baker forgot, and the Pharaoh was sitting on the potty for all day long in angst at the baker. I don't know what happened, but the baker was thrown into prison along with the cupbearer. And it says after they'd been in custody some time, each of the two men, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, were being held in prison. They had a dream. Both of them have a dream on the same night. And each had its own meaning. And so when Joseph comes in the next morning, he's like, hey, guys, how's it going? And they're like, oh, gosh, we're not doing well. We have these dreams. They're terrible. And Joseph's like, look, do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams. Come on, let me hear them. So both men tell Joseph their dreams. Now, the cupbearer, good news for him. Because Joseph says to the cupbearer, hey man, don't even worry about it, because the king's about to have a party, and he's going to let you go. You're good. And the baker's like, oh, well, tell me what my dream means. This part gets a little awkward. Because Joseph's like, well, I'll tell you the truth. The king is going to impale you. And the birds and the animals are going to eat your flesh. But don't worry about it. It'll be just fine, I guess. I don't know. Well, turns out Joseph's right. And this is what happens. Comes to pass just as Joseph says. The cupbearer is released, and the baker, they just didn't like his cooking. Apparently, he was a terrible baker. But Joseph says to the cupbearer, hey, look, they're going to release you. When you are released, will you please tell someone about me because I don't want to be here. Look, I'm a Hebrew. I was sold into slavery. I was thrown into prison. I'm a good dude. I'm organized, and I'm skilled, and I'm a good leader. I don't belong here, so can you please do me a solid and let them know that I shouldn't be here? Well, it says in verse 23, the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph. He forgot him. Now, this is a bummer, right? You're Joseph, hey, I gotta, maybe got a way out of here. I've got aspirations, I got dreams, and it's not in this prison. I got stuff I gotta do. I have a calling. I know God wants to use me, my ability in some way. I don't know how, but I know it probably isn't in this prison. And he's right, God did want to use him. And God is always working, so a little time passes, and Pharaoh, who's the king of Egypt, he begins having dreams, very vivid dreams. And he understands that these dreams are very important, right? This is one of those dreams where you wake up and you just know something is different. Something is different. Ever had a dream like that? Mm-hmm. Chapter 41, verse 8 says, "So he sent for all the magicians and wise men of Egypt. And Pharaoh told them his dreams, but no one could interpret them for him." So Pharaoh, he summons anyone who might have any idea about what his dreams meant. This dream was bothering him. The two dreams, they were bothering him. What do they mean? He doesn't know. And everyone comes to the king's court, and I'm sure they're making guesses, right? It could mean this, it could mean that. But Pharaoh knows that they're not quite right. Something is not right about what they're predicting or what they're interpreting. It's just not right. And so he's dismayed, he's upset, and he's perplexed. Now, of course, the cupbearer is there. He's learned how to not spill the cup, not showing up late anymore. Saw what happened to the baker. You don't want none of that. So he's present, and he sees that the king is sort of struggling, and he's thinking in his mind, oh yeah, I wonder if I should tell him about that Hebrew guy in jail. Do you think he'll be mad at me if I let him know a couple days have gone by? Should I tell him? Well, he tells him. He says, hey, king, remember that one time when I was in jail? Well, there's this Hebrew, and he interpreted my dreams, and he was right. Verse 14 says, Pharaoh sent for Joseph, and he was quickly brought from the dungeon. When he was shaved and changed his clothes, he came before Pharaoh. I feel like this will be said about me when my wife returns home from Texas after her nursing contract is over in a few weeks. It will be said of Aaron, then the children made him bathe, shave, and change his clothes. Joseph got all cleaned up for Pharaoh. And Pharaoh says to Joseph, I had a dream and no one can interpret it. But I heard it said of you that you can hear a dream and interpret it. Joseph says, I cannot. I can't do it. But God will give Pharaoh the answer he desires. That's cool. I like how he says that. It's like a God flex, right? Like, I can't do it, but God can. I like that. Mm-hmm. So Pharaoh tells him his dream. And the first dream consists of 7 fat, healthy cows coming out of the Nile River. Big old fat cows. But then, after the 7 fat cows, there were 7 sick, emaciated cows. And they came up on the bank of the Nile, and they swallowed up the fat cows. And then he has another dream, and this dream is similar, and this dream has to do with wheat. Same principle. Healthy, strong wheat swallowed up by this broken, emaciated, sickly stalks of wheat. And he tells Joseph, look, no one can interpret my dream. None of my magicians can figure it out. And Joseph says, oh, that's easy. I got you. These dreams mean the same thing. You're going to have 7 really, really great years of prosperity in Egypt. But after the prosperity, there's going to be 7 years of famine. And this famine is going to be so incredibly terrible that everyone's going to forget about the prosperity. Now, you know when times are bad, right? Like you can still remember the good times. And what Joseph is saying, hey, the bad times are going to be so bad, ain't no one going to remember the good times, all right? And so Joseph interprets these dreams, but then he goes a step further. And he's like, I'll tell you what you should do. I'll tell you what you should do. You should find someone to be in charge of preparing for this famine. And I'm talking about one person, and he's gonna manage this whole thing. And Joseph starts to lay out this like process and procedure and this strategy using organizational hierarchy. And he's got like flow charts and stuff. Not really, but like this is what's happening. He's like getting just incredibly detailed and telling the Pharaoh exactly what he needs to do. So as you're in the court of Pharaoh and you're hearing this, you're like, this dude just got out of prison and he had shaved and had to change his clothes, and now he's interpreting the dreams and he's telling us all the stuff we got to do. This is pretty incredible, and you can imagine that jaws were dropping. Pharaoh knew this guy was a real deal, okay? Because the dreams that Pharaoh had were from God. And this man was able to tell Pharaoh exactly what they meant. So Pharaoh knew from God that Joseph was right, and he was the real deal. And so Pharaoh says, this plan seems good. And he sort of looks around to everybody who's with him, and he's like, can we find anybody like this guy? Hey, do you know anybody better than him? Look, this guy's got it going on. Do we have anybody better than him? And they don't say anything. Pharaoh says, this guy is full of the Spirit of God. Let's hire him. Let's do it. He can interpret dreams. He's got a great plan. And God is with him. Can we find anybody better? I don't think so. He's the guy. So Pharaoh says to Joseph, since God has made all of this known to you, there is no one as discerning and wise as you. No one. I mean, I've had them all here. No one has what you have. So, you shall be in charge of my palace, and all my people are to submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you. Pharaoh says, look, you got it going on, and I'm putting you in charge. And people will do what you tell them to, and only symbolically and in regards to this throne I sit on will I be greater than you. You're the guy. So now Joseph is in a position to do greater things than he could have ever imagined. I mean, he just couldn't even have ever, Joseph has ambition. You see it when he's in the fields with his brothers. He's got the coat that he has, and he's walking around all confident and arrogant and thinking he's special. God gives him dreams. No way he can imagine this. No way. And then he's at Potiphar's house, and things are going well, and he's making Potiphar money, and he's a success, and maybe he has ambition and aspirations, but no way could he imagine this. And then he's in prison, and he's managing things, and he's interpreting dreams, and he's been put in charge of all these things, but no way could he imagine this. No way. And as we keep reading, he's given power, he's given influence, he has a wife, he has 2 sons, he rides around in a chariot. How cool would that be? What up? I got a chariot. My name's Joseph. I'm a big deal. He's honored. He's respected. And he puts his plan in place. He starts storing grain away. A lot of it. It gets to the point where they've stored so much grain. And if you didn't know it, grain is the staple of all nourishment in the ancient Near East. With grain, you make everything, okay? So much grain that they just can't even keep track of it. They stop counting, right? And you know Joseph likes to count. I mean, he's organized. He's a leader. He thinks in metrics. He stops counting. And there's just a lot. We good. And once the famine hits, after 7 years of prosperity, Egypt's fine. Egypt doing good. Because of Joseph. It says in verse 57, and all the world came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph because the famine was so severe everywhere. All the world. So Joseph, he was a success, right? But not just because he saved Egypt. I mean, look, he was a businessman. He was able to feed people he was able to feed people in Egypt. He was able to feed people everywhere. And he also makes money for Egypt. So he's a success. From the pit to prison to the throne room. I mean, this is one of history's greatest success stories, bar none. So what's the point? I mean, what's the point? Is this passage about interpreting dreams? Is this passion about ambition and following your own dreams? Nah, not really. It gets preached this way, right? I mean, pastors preach that all the time when we get to this passage. And look, here's the reality. If I'm communicating to you, I want you to like what I say. I want you to go tell your friends how smart I am and what a good message I gave you, right? So if I want to do that, I want to tell you what you feel like you want to hear about the passage. And so a lot of times when we preach this message, we say things like, if your dreams are big enough and your faith is big enough, God will reward you and you'll get charity of your own. You run around your own neighborhood with a chariot. And God will give you wealth and prosperity and fame, and you'll live to be 110 years old with great teeth. Is that how it works? No. That's not what the story is about. And that's not even true. The story's bigger than that. Much bigger. It's much deeper and more consequential than just our aspirations and our demands on God. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that's what our dreams are. They're demands on God. God, if you love me, you will give me this, and this. We think like toddlers in relationship to God. If you love me. My daughter Azariah, I send videos to my wife of her just like me having conversations with her. And yesterday, she said to me, Daddy, you will not tell me no. Because you don't tell princesses no. And I said to her, do you know what the daddy of the princess is called? And she said, no. I said, the king! Now go brush your teeth. And she did. She goes, oh yeah, you're right. We think about God like we're toddlers and we demand things from him. But that's not what the story is about. It's not about our demands and God doing what we ask. It's not about our dreams and aspirations. This is a story about God's presence, God's providence, his working ahead to bring restoration and redemption. And as you read this story, maybe you didn't know it, and I'm certain Joseph didn't know it, but it's through Joseph's family that Jesus would be born in just under 2,000 years, right? Like Joseph is the ancestor of Jesus. And that family has famine and death in their future if that bratty little brother doesn't get thrown into a well and sold into slavery, then imprisoned, then elevated into a position to provide food and nourishment to Egypt and his own family. Do you understand? Like, this entire story is about God moving his plan forward and choosing this one man to do it. That's what the story is about. And we're going to see this unfold next week as like really the best part of this story. There's this reunion in the family between Joseph and his brothers. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. It's so good. And so we understand that there is this element of this story that's very, very big picture, very broad, in the sense that God is using faithful people to advance this great plan one step at a time into the future. Now, when it comes down to it, just like every other page in the Bible, this story is essentially going to be about Jesus. What's the Bible about? Jesus. What's the book of Judges about? Jesus. How about Deuteronomy? Jesus. Judges, Ruth, Jesus. What's Genesis about? Jesus. It's all pointing to Jesus, okay? But, all that being said, I mean, even if this story is eventually pointing to Jesus and his life and his death and his resurrection and the transformation that his life brings to our life, is there something that maybe we can learn from it too? Especially those of us that are a little bit ambitious. Anybody here ambitious? Anybody here have dreams? Anybody here have a future that you have mapped out in front of you? Desires, hopes, wishes, aspirations. I'm kind of ambitious. I want big things for my life. I know that there are others here who feel the same way. Of course, of course. So what can people like us learn from this? Well, I want to give you 4 words that summarize the role ambition plays in our lives. Now, I made sure to count to make sure these were actually 4 words. And not 3. I've done that before. These are easy ones. It ain't about you. I know ain't a word, but it is for now. It ain't about you. It ain't about you. And today we've covered 2 chapters in the book of Genesis. And one time in each chapter, Joseph makes a statement that we should pay attention to. If we go back to chapter 40, the cupbearer, he says, hey, we both had dreams. And then Joseph says, what? He says, do not interpretations belong to God. And then we go forward to chapter 41, and then Pharaoh's like, hey, no one can understand these dreams, and maybe I was hoping that you can do it. And Joseph says, I cannot. Nope, can't do it. But God can. Right. Where does the credit go? Where does the credit go? 3-letter word, pretty easy one. God. What's the motivator? God. So Joseph's ambition was never about his own personal comfort or success or achievement. It was always, always, always about God's glory and his role in moving the story forward as God's vessel. And maybe Joseph doesn't know that he's Jesus' great, 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 great ancestor. But what he does know is that he's called and purposed, and it's his role to move that story forward. Is your ambition like this? Are your dreams like this? Why do you want a successful business? Successful organization? savings account, good job, education, kids. Why do you want to earn more money? Is it because you have something to prove to your parents or the person who told you no? Is it happiness or contentment or security? Is it because you think that the things that you want are going to finally make you feel like you're important or you have value or you're good enough? What I can tell you is that I've wanted all of those things and for all of those reasons, and when I have achieved them, I haven't felt any better about anything. Because there's always something else. Ambition is super weird. Dreams are super weird because we want things for all these different reasons, and then we put all this time and energy into them, and we feel like, well, once I have that thing, and we can name a whole list, I want this person, or I want this job, or I want this degree, or I want this, or this. We all have a list, right? And once I have that thing, I'm going to be super happy, and everything's going to be fine, and I can just finally relax and take a nap, and I can finally be content. It just doesn't work like that. Because we get satisfied for a minute, and then we realize we want something else. It's sort of like an itch that you can't, get to. Ever have an itch on, the palm of your hand or, in your fingers, and you're like, am I the only one? And you just can't get it, and you're like, I either need to cut my hand off or do something else because I'm going crazy. Ambition's like this. It's just like that. Ambition, human contentment, happiness, same thing. We keep chasing it, and then you think you find it, and then you lose interest, or you wonder what's next, or you realize that it wasn't that important to begin with. We're all chasing. We're all chasing. The truth is, we got to come to terms with the reality that either we as human beings can never be satisfied, or we are seeking satisfaction in the wrong stuff. Now, I think that we are created in the image of God, and God would not design us with some desire that cannot be met. This doesn't make logical sense. So what I think is that we're searching for the wrong stuff. Because our needs and wants are always a priority. We always put those things first. And the joy we want, even if we don't think it is, I want this, I want my kids to have you ever done this before? I want my kids to have a great Christmas. And so I'm going to borrow, or I'm going to work extra, or I'm going to charge it, and then I'm going to give them the most presents they ever had, and then I'm going to feel like I'm the best parent ever, and then Christmas morning comes, you've got more presents than anybody could ever imagine. They open them up, they don't seem grateful enough, and you get angry. You didn't want them to have a great Christmas for them. You wanted that for you. And because they didn't give the response that you expected, you feel unsatisfied. So often the things that we think they're going to satisfy us, even if we think they're for others, they're for us. But what if we said, here is where I'm gifted. Here's what I can do. Here is my passion or my craft. Here are my resources. Here are my blessings. And I don't want to use them to be the best or have the best or achieve the best. I want to use them to do the best in Jesus' name for the greatest good in the world around me. What if I just said all this stuff that makes me special and unique and gifted, all the stuff that God gave me, all the things that I have that I could really make a difference with? I'm going to use that to bless other people. I'm going to use that to honor other people. I'm going to use that to bring peace and kindness and joy and hope to other people. That's what Joseph did, right? Joseph was determined, and he was smart, and he was organized, and he was a leader, and he said, this isn't for me, it's for God. And I want to use it in a way that moves the story forward and brings comfort and peace and provision and nourishment and hope to the people around me. I don't want the people around me to suffer, so I'm going to do what I can. And then this is why Jesus talks about storing up treasures in heaven, right? You ever heard Jesus say that? He's like, don't store treasure here, store it there. And he's not really talking about like, you don't get it like a bank vault in the clouds. What he's talking about is using your life and your gift for an eternal purpose. Using what you have and what you're gifted with and what you're passionate about for something that will reverberate through history and eternity. And those things are always measured qualitatively in things like love, grace, kindness, generosity, peace. They're the things that you can't quite put your fingers on, right? They're the things that take effort from the heart. Sacrifice from the soul. It's the thing that you do that sometimes people will tell you that you're crazy. That's the kind of stuff. That's the kind of stuff that God wants us to store up. Store up. Store up. Now, there's all sorts of ambitious people in the world. All sorts of people with dreams and aspirations and hopes and plans. And most of these people, I have to be honest, will eventually leave this world and make very little impact or imprint. It's not because they don't try. It's not because they're lazy. It's because they get caught up in this cycle of ambition and dissatisfaction and ambition and disappointment and trying to do more and trying to do this and then trying to do that and wondering, why aren't I happy? I do what my parents say and I got an education, and I do what my husband said and I got a great job, and I'm doing all these things and I'm saving and I'm doing what I should do. I'm trying to be a good person, but I'm never happy. It's a cycle. Everyone has a choice to use their ambition and dreams on the things that will suit themselves and their fleeting goals. Or they can use it to partner with God in what He is trying to do in the world, which is always to bring restoration and healing and peace and comfort. I had this thought the other day as I was looking through this old photo album I have. It's this really old photo album. I have a picture of it. Can I get that picture? There it is. That is old. This is the time of year, scary movies are coming out and everything. This looks like something from a vampire show. If I were to watch that stuff. Anybody seen The Chosen? That's all I watch. It's the Jesus story, Jesus of Nazareth. That's Passion of the Christ. That's what I watch all the time. But if I were to watch those shows, that would be like a photo album you'd see in one of those shows. All right. So this thing is old. Very, 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 very old. I don't know how old it is, but it's really old. And there's a lot of pictures in there. And it's full of pictures that were taken from a photography studio over the course of a couple decades and generations in the studio in Marietta, Ohio, and also in Zanesville. And it starts in the 1860s. Can we get the first picture? All right. There's one of my relatives. 1860-something. I don't know. How about another picture? There's another one. Just keep on going through. That dude's a werewolf. I don't know who she is, but okay. Nice mustache. Very nice mustache. That picture, okay. I don't know who you're trying to fool with that cross, but she's a vampire, all right? Go ahead. Oh, look at that. That's a dog. That's a dog. And a rabbit. These people are crazy. Crazy. These are the Durbins. Can you go back to a human picture real quick? Okay, that guy. Keep it there. All right, let's keep it there. These are the Durbins, and as I'm going through this book, there's one name in there. There's one name, and it's Clement E. Durbin. And I don't know which one he is. Let's say it's that guy. Let's say it's that guy. But he would be, whoever Clement is in this book would be my great-great-great-great-grandfather. I don't know who the guy is. Never met him. Don't know which one he is. Now, these photos are all originals. I'm the only person on planet Earth that has these pictures. And I don't know who any of these people are. These people were all full of hope, ambition, dreams, beliefs, traditions, and I am their descendant. Crazy to think about. I have that dude's DNA. I mean, obviously, I've got that dude's DNA. My kids have their DNA. And I don't know who they are. Not a single one of them. That's going to be me someday. You too. Just an old image in a photo book. Just a piece of stone on the ground with your name on it. It says, "Here lies." People be looking at our pictures and making fun of us, talking about how we're vampires. Talking about our hair, our clothes. So I guess the question is, if we're just going to end up some memory with even our relatives not even knowing who we are, how to identify us, where are we going to put our ambition? What are we going to do with our dreams? Where are we going to invest? Are we going to focus it here on stuff, on interests and hobbies and pursuits that only make us happy for a minute until we find something else to occupy our time? Or are we going to put it somewhere where the difference is measured in eternity? You know what I want to do? I want to use what I have, whatever God has given me. I want to use it first and foremost in my home. So, I want my wife to feel like she is the most beautiful, special, wonderful, loved, cared about woman on planet Earth. That is my number one priority. I want her to feel like she's $1 billion every single day. And then my kids. I want my kids to learn all sorts of fun stuff. I want them to laugh and have a good sense of humor and to know all the presidents. And I want them to be able to point on a map where Ohio is and identify countries in Europe and know about all the wars and know how to be kind to people and know about Jesus and how to tell a joke and how to cook chili. And I want to just tell all my kids and teach all my kids all the best stuff. And I want my sons to know how to love their wives really, really, really well. And my daughters, I want to teach them that I can say no to them, But after I do all that, and I know that a lot of you will think the same thing. Hey, you know what? I only got so much energy. I'm going to give it to my family. That's good. Give it to your family first. But you know what? Here's the truth. Let me just say this. I've got 8 kids, right? I got a lot going on in my life. But I still have a whole lot more energy to give. I mean, I just do. I do. I have a whole lot of treasure I can store up in heaven. I want to be generous, like really generous. I love it. My wife will call me. She's like, hey, is it okay if I buy the entire floor pizza? I'm like, of course it is. And she's like, hey, there's this nurse, and she doesn't have any gas money, and she's trying to get to her assignment in Georgia, and she's trying to drive from California. Can we put her in a hotel and pay her gas? I'm like, why are you even asking me this? Of course. Like, why'd you ask me? I want to do that. Like, I want to be generous and just give and give and give. My time, my resources, I just want to give. And I want to teach people the power of grace. Like, man, if we could learn grace, we could learn a whole lot about Jesus. And I want to teach people about love, man. Like, love is something that we don't have enough of. I mean, we are in this world, and so often we say things like, oh, you're just being tricked by them. No, we're all being tricked. You know why? Because we've been fooled into thinking that love is not the best option. Love feels good. And Jesus has shown us how to do it. I want to teach people that. I don't care what every other church and every other leader and the news, I don't care nothing about none of that. I want to teach people about Jesus. That's what I want to do. And I want to teach and I want to preach. And I want to show people that thing that they've been searching for, right? Like I want to show people who are caught in that cycle of ambition and disappointment and ambition and disappointment. I want to show them what they're looking for. I want to show them, hey, there is this thing that God designed you with a longing for, and guess what? It's Him. It's Him. And I'm just a beggar like you. But I know where the bread's at. Let's go get it. Yeah, that's what I want to do. How about you? How about you? You are gifted and you are talented and you are uniquely positioned. Oh, I believe this. In eternity past, God said, hey, I'm going to put Deb here. I'm going to put Crystal here. Put Steve right here. You are uniquely positioned by God to use your gifts and time and resources on something eternal. To move that story forward. So what are you going to do? Someday you'll just be a memory. And then not even a memory, just an old picture. You may not even have a good mustache. Now, usually I want to give some bullet points, right? I'm going to say, here's 3 things you can do. Not today. Because I think maybe this week you should leave here feeling the question, what about me? What will I do? How will I spend my life? Maybe it's time you ask God how He can use you and really be okay with the answer, because let me tell you something. When you ask God how He can use you, He's always going to give you an answer that seems really outrageously hard and sacrificial. God's not going to be like, hey, look, first, your brothers are going to beat you half to death, and then they're going to throw you in a well, and then they're going to sell you in slavery, and then, get this, you're going to think things are going really well, but then this woman's going to accuse you of rape, and then you're going to go to jail again. Like, God isn't going to be telling you that. What He's going to say is, and the Lord was with Crystal, and the Lord was with Deb, and the Lord was with Todd, and the Lord was with Hannah, and the Lord was with Josh, and the Lord was with Steve, and the Lord was with her, right? So you just move forward. You just keep going. You just keep stepping forward. You just keep persevering. You just keep loving. You just keep giving. You just keep hoping. What about me? Ask God. See what He says. Maybe it's time for some introspection and questions for your own heart. What will define me? Where will I leave my legacy? Where will my ambition lead me? How will my life be measured? Where? Where will I store my treasure?